Good morning, everyone. This is Shannon from Crime Spies. Welcome, welcome. There is a weaponization subcommittee this morning, and I was going to live stream it, of course, but I just noticed that they were holding a press conference ahead of this meeting. So I have it queued up. They are supposed to start at 8 a.m. Central Time, so 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And I have it at 1.25 speed, so hopefully we can zippity-doo-dah through it before the committee meeting starts. So I decided to just go live early. So here, let's go.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. Politics is driving the agenda in far too many of our federal agencies. Don't believe me? Just read the Durham report from a couple days ago, where they outline what exactly took, where you had the FBI and the Justice Department start an investigation with no predicate, no evidence, no probable cause whatsoever. But today it's worse. Today it's worse. It's not just going after presidential candidates, presidential campaigns. Today it's the American people. If you're a parent attending a school board meeting, you're a pro-lifer praying at a clinic, or you're a Catholic simply going to Mass, you are a target of the government, target of the FBI. And maybe even worse than all that, if you're one of the thousands of good employees, brave whistleblowers who's willing to come forward, if you're one of these folks willing to come forward and talk about what's going on out there, you get attacked. They will try to crush you. And today we're going to hear in a hearing, just less than an hour from now, we will hear from 3 of those individuals. We have talked to over 24 whistleblowers. We have interviewed several of those individuals, and 3 of them are willing to come forward today and testify in our hearing. You all have a report that outlines what we've uncovered, what these whistleblowers have brought to us. And today, as I said, you're going to get to hear from 3 of them. You will hear how they come and talked about those very things I just mentioned, the school board's issue, the Catholic memo, this effort to inflate and make every case seem as if it's some domestic violent extremism case. But you'll also hear about how the FBI retaliated against these guys, how when Mr. O'Boyle was moving his family from Kansas to Virginia, they kept his belongings locked up, wouldn't let him get access to his kids' clothes. They had a newborn, all the things they did to these, wouldn't let Mr. Friend get access to his firearm training records so he could get employment. The FBI's admitted that they were wrong to do that. So you're going to hear from them today, and we're looking forward to that. We think it will be a powerful hearing, powerful testimony from some great Americans who have served our country and been retaliated against because they were willing to come give us information, valuable information about the targeting of American people. And with that, I'd like to turn over to one of our great members, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for your leadership. The FBI has been victimized by political capture, and that politicization has manifested in the targeting of Americans who never deserved to have this government weaponized against them. Whistleblowers saw those bad acts. They stepped forward, and they were retaliated against and crushed as a consequence. And our work today will build on the work of Special Counsel Durham, who said recently that at the FBI there is confirmation bias, an overwillingness to rely on information from individuals connected to political opponents and action without appropriate objectivity. One of the whistleblowers we'll hear from today served in the United States Marine Corps, served as a local cop, Garrett O'Boyle, and this is his testimony regarding that political capture.
Do you believe that the FBI has become political?
I do. I think most people out in the field try to avoid that politicization of the agency, which is good, but it's gotten to a point, it seems to me, that it's like a cancerous point where the FBI has let itself become enveloped in this politicization and weaponization that I don't know how to even begin to fix it.
One group that saw that weaponization work against them were Catholics. The FBI field office in Richmond put out a memo saying that violent extremists would find the Catholic ideology attractive and would attempt to connect with Catholic adherents. The extremists would show an interest in Catholic congregations over the next 12 to 24 months leading up to the presidential election. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? And the memo calls for the FBI to develop sources with Catholic congregations to try to obtain information about those folks. Another group that saw weaponization turn against them, parents who attended school board meetings. You'll hear today from Steve Friend, who worked for the FBI and actually found himself ridiculed at his own FBI office because he too was a parent who attended a school board meeting. This is Steve Friend.
given your law enforcement background, does knowing that you could be investigated by the FBI for speaking up at your child's school board meeting chill parents from exercising their First Amendment rights?
Yes.
And you said you had attended a school board meeting and you were nervous that you could be under federal investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, my colleagues teased me about it.
Americans who were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, who committed no crimes, who simply attended a rally, also saw the FBI weaponized against them. George Hill was an FBI employee working out of the Boston field office, and he talks about the pressure that the Washington field office was putting on Boston, and when they tried to get predicate evidence, they couldn't get it for a very interesting reason. This is George Hill.
Joe Bonavante said, no, we're not opening up cases on people who went to a rally. And I forgot a key part. The SSA for CT2 said, happy to do it, show us where they were inside the Capitol, and we'll look into it. To which WFO said, we can't show you those videos unless you can tell us the exact time and place those individuals were inside the Capitol. To which the SSA responded back, and I was privy to these conversations firsthand, why can't you show us, why can't you just send us, give us access to the 11,000 hours of video that's available? Because there may be UC's undercover officers or CHS's confidential human sources on those videos whose identity we need to protect.
Marcus Allen, an FBI analyst who did work around evidence, sharing it with folks, he saw videos that concerned him about the federal government's own involvement in January 6th. Here's Marcus Allen.
Video to me indicated potential problems with the investigation as far as informants were concerned, and our organization's potential forthrightness about utilization of informants there on that day that might have some impact on our cases, and the subjects that we were looking at, and just a general awareness overall for the investigation as a whole that there might have been some kind of potential federal involvement with the activities on January 6th, and I thought it was important enough that it warranted our attention.
So much of the good work happening at the FBI is throughout this country, and a lot of the rot, the committee has learned, emerges out of headquarters and out of the Washington field office. Garrett O'Boyle described the conflict that existed as the Washington field office put pressure on other field offices around the country to engage in law enforcement work without predication. This is Mr. O'Boyle.
Did the WFO pressure other field offices to keep January 6th cases open or open cases?
I would say they pressured us to open cases to some degree. One example that I have personally, I made this is one of my protective disclosures, so I'll just touch on it a little bit, but I received a lead about someone based on an anonymous tip, and in law enforcement, anonymous tips don't hold very much weight, especially without evidence that you can corroborate pretty easily. I wasn't able to corroborate anything they said, even after speaking with the person they alleged potential criminal behavior of. While I'm trying to figure all that out, I get another lead from the same agent who sent me that lead, and they've essentially tried to get me to violate policy or law.
Trying to get people to break the law without sufficient predication is a weaponization of our government, and all Americans suffer when resources are misallocated, when stats are padded following 9/11. The FBI set up all of these terrorism entities to look outward at people abroad who might seek to harm our country, but a lot of those authorities were turned inward against our own people, and the result was stat padding for the purpose of FBI officials trying to convince Congress that the violent extremism threat was more enhanced than it indeed was, and we got critical testimony on that point also from Mr. O'Boyle.
As a DT agent, I encountered similar staff padding or case bolstering. Truth be told, it was one case, but the FBI had me open up 4 different cases because they had me open a case for every individual that I had a articulable factual basis that there may have been potential federal law being violated. Or on a criminal case, say you're working with a gang, which this case was, I guess, like a militia. If you're working with a gang, you have a case open on the gang, and you have a subfile for each person in it. John Doe 1, 2, and 3, they all have their own subfile. Or in my case, John Doe 1, 2, 3, and 4 all had their own separate case, because then the FBI can, from my perspective, the FBI can come back to Congress and say, look at all the domestic terrorism we've investigated. Well, really, I was working one case, but the FBI can then say, well, he actually had 4. So you should give us more money because look at how big of a threat all this domestic terrorism is.
Padding the stats to try to showcase a problem that is overemphasized, political capture and political infection of our law enforcement. These brave patriots spoke up about it. They'll be testifying to our committee today, and my colleagues will now discuss some of the intense and depraved retaliation that they had to experience, and I'd recognize my colleague from Florida, Kat Kamick, to share some of those thoughts with us.
Good morning. I really can't say that this today, what you were hearing, what you will be hearing more of in this hearing in the coming hours, it couldn't be overstated how important this is. I think Representative Gates, you just laid out very succinctly why this is so critical. You know, I know a lot of people back home are wondering, you know, we hear about this weaponization, you guys get up here, you investigate, but nothing ever seems to happen. Think about this for a minute, though. Why this is so critical that we are investigating the weaponization of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. As was pointed out, if you are a parent and you attend a school board meeting, there could be an FBI agent in the parking lot scribbling down your license plate number. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually testimony that these brave whistleblowers have given us. That is not America that I know. If you are a Catholic and you want to attend Catholic Mass, perhaps there is an informant inside reporting on what you are doing inside. This is the thing that novels are written about. This is spy movies. If you think about the FBI whistleblowers who have come forward bravely, this today will demonstrate the pattern that the FBI has used in retaliating against them and their families, because their families have served just as honorably alongside them. These men have served our country, both in law enforcement and in the United States military. Furthermore, as we have seen, these are decorated individuals who were led down a path only to find themselves left out in the cold, iced out, and this was by design. When the FBI was questioned about this, the word that kept coming back was, it's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that they leave these people in a position where they cannot seek outside employment, they cannot access their personal belongings, despite the fact that these men have served their country. But even worse, the loyalty to the nation has been questioned. This is truly the weaponization of government. Whether you are the President of the United States, as we have seen in the Durham report, whether or not you are a parent concerned about your child's education, whether you are just someone who wants to go to Mass, you could find yourself a target of the FBI. This FBI certainly knows no bounds, and we are seeing that in every single interview, in every single piece of evidence that we uncover. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but I would like to reiterate what what Representative Matt Gaetz said earlier. This is not about the good men and women of the FBI, the rank and file agents who do their job honorably. No, this is about the political corruption at the very top that has seeped down into every field office across this nation. If you don't toe the company line, you might find yourself a target of the FBI, whether you are an outsider or an insider. And that is what we seek to uncover. One of my colleagues here today will outline some of the key retaliation points, so I don't want to belabor that point. But I do want to say, to those that are concerned that we investigate and there is no subsequent action, everyone standing behind me agrees. We have to present the evidence, we have to deliver that evidence, and then we have to take action to make sure that there are consequences, but also that this never happens again. That is why in this particular case, I am so glad that the treatment of these whistleblowers is being referred to by the U.S. Office of Special Counsel and the Inspector General for further investigation. And I would encourage you all today in today's hearing to witness the treatment that these whistleblowers will receive from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle who will seek to discredit them at every turn. I would like you to keep in mind the contrast during the January 6th testimony of how their whistleblowers were treated. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague from the great state of Wyoming, Representative Harriet Hageman.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, everyone. Whistleblowers are protected by law, and the reason is simple and understandable. We must be able to count on disclosures from rank and file employees in order to conduct our oversight and hold people accountable for wrongdoing. The whistleblowers we will be hearing from today have identified and described egregious abuse, misallocation of law enforcement resources, and misconduct within the leadership ranks of the FBI. In short, the leadership in the FBI is politically corrupt. And they are ruining our flagship law enforcement agency by targeting politicians, parents, and ordinary citizens. The eye of Sauron, in other words, has been turned on the American people, and it is a frightening time in which we live. These FBI whistleblowers have come forward at great personal and professional expense. They have faced retaliation from the FBI for their disclosures, which have blocked them from working inside and outside of the FBI. And then when they expose such abuses, They themselves are subject to abuse by congressional Democrats who selectively leak or write reports attempting to discredit them while ignoring the substance of what they say. Under Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, the FBI and the DOJ are broken. It is politically weaponized against the American people, using constitutionally protected rights as a predicate to investigate and surveil people. They target conservatives inside and outside of the organization, and they are crushing anyone who dares to report their wrongdoing. Again, this is exactly why Congress needs whistleblowers to conduct oversight and course correct these abusive federal agencies. Sadly, what we will see from the Democrats today will not be a focus on the substance of what these brave men have exposed, or a discussion of how to protect our constitutional rights and institutions from the tyrants who are running these agencies. Instead, what we will see is a deflection. They will call our witnesses names. They will scream MAGA and extremist at the top of their lungs. They will pound the tables. They will continue to gaslight us about Russia, 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 because that's all that Adam Schiff knows what to say. But make no mistake, they are simply trying to cover up the unforgivable and the indefensible. The creation of a two-tier justice system based on political beliefs and the corruption of our political elites. I encourage the American people, and I encourage you, the press, to start listening, to start reading, to start understanding what has been exposed in our government. And then I encourage you to go watch the movie The Lives of Others, because that is where we're headed if we don't correct what is happening within the FBI and the DOJ. We thank these whistleblowers for their service to our nation, service which includes their integrity and bravery to stand up and expose wrongdoing. They are the ones standing on the wall to make sure that we can protect the greatest republic that's ever existed in the history of the world. They're fighting back against the people who will tear it down. With that, I would introduce Mike Johnson from Louisiana.
Thank you. I'll be brief and summarize this because we're going to get to your questions. But let me just say this simply. America works because we're a nation of laws, not of men. The rule of law is incredibly important to maintain a constitutional republic. And it's in jeopardy right now because when you have the Department of Justice and the FBI itself engaged in the activities that we're talking about here today, it alarms the American people. They understand that our institutions are crumbling. The people's faith in our institutions, our system of justice itself, is at an all-time low. It's because of the things that we're highlighting here this morning. Our constituents, and I mean millions and millions of Americans, are deeply concerned about the things that we're talking about here today. They've seen this. And when they found out that parents who showed up at school board meetings were labeled as domestic terrorists, when they found out that the FBI is trying to recruit informants and spies inside traditional Catholic congregations, when they found out that the FBI was meeting regularly with social media platforms over the last 2 election cycles to censor and silence conservative candidates and voices online, when they find out that patriots stand up to blow the whistle on this, and they're being retaliated against by those who are engaged in this corruption, it alarms them, and it should. So we hear back when I'm at home and I'm doing town halls, all of us, we're talking to our constituents, average, everyday, hardworking Americans and families, and they say, why can't you guys stop it? Why can't somebody be indicted? Why can't they be put on trial in a court of law? Well, we're just the Congress. We have a solemn responsibility of oversight. That is exactly what we are engaging in the Weaponization Committee, and it's sad that it's come to this. But I often have to explain back home, we don't have the ability to indict anybody or put them on trial in court. We're just members of Congress. What we do have the responsibility of doing, and what we do have the power of doing, is putting this on view of the American public, putting it, the facts, I guess, on trial in the court of public opinion. And so that's what this is about. We want these brave whistleblowers to come forward and tell their stories, and it is compelling information. You're going to be shocked by some of the things you hear. But here's something else you need to know. As Chairman Jordan said, we've got a couple dozen whistleblowers. We've only got a few who are able to come forward and put their name and their face to this. You know why? Because the rest of them are fearful that their careers will be ended, that their families will be put in jeopardy, like you're going to hear this morning, that all these things would happen to them as well. And so we respect that. We're not trying to urge or compel anybody to come forward because we know what's at stake for them, and that is frightening. So we're hopeful that at the end of this, we can bring about reforms, that we can change what's happening here to ensure that the kind of abuses that you're seeing here never happen again. And watch, as was said just a moment ago, watch. You're in a hearing today, watch what the Democrats do. They're going to come out, they're going to try to discredit these men, these brave patriots. They're going to try to say that they're not trustworthy. But I think you can evaluate that for yourself when you hear from them. See some of the video highlights, but see in person today and hear their heart and how they're grieved for America as we are, and that we've got to bring about these changes. So with that, I'll yield back to Chairman Jordan, and we'll take a few questions.
WFO or the headquarters?
I believe the answer to that question is yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'll go here and I'll go back.
The FBI put out a letter yesterday explaining why the security clearances for Marcus Allen and Steve Friend were officially revoked earlier this month.
Mhm.
It details that Marcus Allen raised questions that whether or not January 6th should be investigated, raises that Marcus Allen didn't have any, claimed there was no open source information on an individual who was at the Capitol on January 6th, a separate individual found that person actually assaulted a Capitol police officer, and Steve Friend was entering FBI space and removed and took information on an unauthorized removed flash drive. These are details that the FBI explains why these security clearances of these two individuals who are going to be.
Marcus Allen had a security clearance for 20 years, did 2 tours in Iraq, decorated veteran of our armed services, and you'll get to hear from him today. And it doesn't frankly surprise me that the FBI puts out this letter the night before we're going to have a hearing. This is the same FBI who, as I think all our speakers said, same FBI who said it's appropriate to put snitches inside the Catholic Church. It's appropriate to use the Patriot Act against parents and develop a snitch line that people can report them. And these guys, Mr. O'Boyle's the
I don't know what's going on here. Oh, this is not good. See? It's like the gremlins don't want us to see what's going on. Let's try to refresh. Please hold. Oh no.
The problem is in the Washington field office here and at the headquarters. Last one.
You're talking a lot about the point of this press conference. The point of the hearing is to talk about how the FBI is politicized. But do you think it's appropriate for some of these whistleblowers, including 2 who will be at your hearing today, to be paid by one of the former president's closest advisors, Kash Patel, who's active?
They got a family. How are they supposed to feed their family? 450 days. The FBI has kept Mr. O'Boyle in limbo, where he can't work without pay. He's got 4 kids. He was selected to come to this special unit they were forming here in Virginia. He moves his family, and the day he gets here, they say, hey, we're suspending your clearance. And they won't let him get access to his furniture, his clothes, and he's got a 2-week-old newborn child. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Of course they're gonna do whatever they can to feed their family, and I don't fault them for that.
And just one more thing. You have said, and your colleagues have said, that today in the hearing, the Democrats are going to undercut the credibility of these witnesses. Can you just explain broadly for our understanding how the committee, how your staff vets whistleblowers, generally speaking, including the ones who will appear today?
They come to us. They come to us. If they're willing to sit for an interview, they'll sit for an interview. If they're willing to testify publicly, we'll let them testify publicly. That's what's happening today. But some of them, frankly, were willing to sit for an interview, and they don't want to testify publicly. They saw what the Democrats did a few weeks ago, where the Democrats selective leaks from their interview to the press. And guess what? The New York Times, the Washington Post, and Rolling Stone all had to issue corrections because what the Democrats told them was not accurate. So when a whistleblower sees all that, they get nervous. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Anyway, well, we got to get to the committee here. It starts in a few minutes. Thank you all very much.
Okay, now it looks like we're just waiting for them. How's it going, everybody? Boy, I hate when it has that round spinny thing. Oh, I know what I can do. While we're waiting, my new ad. Just wanted to pause for a moment to remind you that Rumble Rants are available during these live streams. After 5 weeks and over 17,000 views, we've finally broken $1. Rumble Rants to the rescue. Check the $sign to the left of the live chat box. Use the sliding scale to adjust any donation, which will correspond to the number of minutes your rant is visible to the audience. Click the drop-down menu to add your payment info, or check the box to become a monthly subscriber, which will display a supporter badge next to your name in the chat. Click buy and send and you're all set. We really appreciate anything you can do to help. Non-monetary contributions are as simple as liking the video, sharing it on your social media, following the channel, and posting a comment. We've also set up a new account on Venmo. Our account name is Crime Spies without a space. Anything you can do to support this growing channel is most appreciated. Now, let's get back to the live stream. And we're still waiting. There's 742 people watching on YouTube. Well, at least we got that pre-hearing press conference done before we started. Yeah, I came to turn on the computer, you know, get the streamer configurations because Rumble still is only giving me one live stream code, RTMP, to use, which is kind of baloney because I upgraded my membership there thinking, oh, well, it says unlimited live streams, and they still are only giving me one at a time. Well, it's kind of hard to build an audience when, you know, you're you're only able to do, like, let your audience know one thing at a time. I am working on starting a new morning segment, and I'm going to be calling it Covfefe and Crime. So we'll cover the morning headlines on true crime. Now remember, this channel is kind of exploring several different worlds of true crime. Number one, trials. For example, Monday starts the Timothy Blaifnick trial, which I'll be covering, although we won't be probably doing it Monday because it's just jury selection, but opening statements begin on Tuesday. Now, Timothy Blaifnick is the former Family Feud contestant that was asked by Steve Harvey, "What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?" To which he replied, "Say I do." And now he's in prison. He's been arrested. His trial starts.
Subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to
Here we
declare
go.
a recess
Get your popcorn,
at
people.
any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on the weaponization of the federal government. And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from the great state of Utah to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. Politics is driving the agenda in federal agencies. You don't believe me? Just read the Durham report from 3 days ago. No probable cause, no predicate, no evidence whatsoever, but the FBI opened a case, took a dossier they knew was false, from a political campaign, from the Clinton campaign, to spy on a presidential candidate and American citizens. Here was the key line from the Durham report. Quote, "The FBI failed to uphold their mission of fidelity to the law." They didn't follow the law, didn't have probable cause or evidence to do what they did. An agency focused on politics. But I would argue today it's even worse, because today it's not just presidential campaigns. Today it's the American people. They're the target. You're not politically correct. You're not in line with what they think should be the political position, the proper position. You're the target. Parents attending a school board meeting, pro-lifers praying at a clinic, or Catholics simply attending Mass, you could be a target. And maybe what's just as frightening is if you're one of the good employees in our government who come forward to talk about the targeting, you then become a target. You face retaliation. If you're one of those, and I think there are thousands and thousands of good employees working across our country in the FBI and other agencies, but if you're one of those good employees driven by your commitment to the Constitution and your conscience, and you come forward, they're going to come after you. If you come forward and tell us about the radical traditional Catholic memo, you come forward and tell us about this idea that they're going to create some snitch line to report on parents going to school board meetings, you do that, they will try to crush you. They will retaliate against you. They're coming after you. But these guys today, they were brave enough. They took their oath seriously. They believe in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the rule of law, and they came forward. And I want to thank them for doing it. But because they did, man, oh man, have they faced retaliation. Mr. O'Boyle was selected for a new unit, moved his family from Kansas to Quantico, Virginia, and the first day he arrives here, after being selected for this new unit, serving in our military, serving well in the FBI, with first day he arrives here, they tell him his clearance is suspended. Can't get his belongings for his family, can't get his clothes, can't get his children's clothes, 4 kids and a 2-week-old newborn. Mr. Friend raised concerns about using the SWAT team to arrest someone who was willing to turn themselves in, and the FBI takes his clearance
Wouldn't even let him get access to his firearms training records, which he needs to get employment. Mr. O'Boyle's went 200 some days without getting paid. Mr. Allen's went 450 days without getting paid. This is the kind of retaliation they have faced for coming forward and telling us the truth. For Mr. Allen, he lost his clearance for simply doing his job, compiling case-related research, using open source material, news, and articles, and passing them on to the people working the case. And they didn't like some of the material he passed on. 450 days without pay. And the retaliation isn't limited to the FBI. Democrats on this committee also engaged in it. They leaked parts of these guys' interviews to the press. Press reported on it, and then the press had to issue corrections. The Post, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Rolling Stone, because what the Democrats told them wasn't accurate, what they reported wasn't accurate. That's why Mr. Allen would only let Republicans talk to him. He said, I've seen what's going on. I want to be interviewed by the Republicans. We've talked to over 24 whistleblowers. People have come to us. We've interviewed several of those, and today 3 of them. 3 of those brave whistleblowers and a lawyer who represents them will tell us their story. They will tell us what happened, what they saw, and then what happened to them because they were courageous enough to report it to Congress. And I just want to tell you guys, get ready. Get ready, because these guys are going to come after you. You know they are. Last hearing we had 2 journalists, Democrats, 2 Democrat journalists sat right where you guys did, and these guys tried to get them to divulge their sources. Someone needs to tell them how the First Amendment works. And while Mr. Taibbi, one of those award-winning journalists sitting right where you're sitting, was testifying, guess what else was happening? The IRS was knocking on his door. So get ready. But I know you're up to the task because you came forward in the first place. Thank you for your commitment to the Constitution, the First Amendment, the rule of law, and for your willingness to come forward and tell Congress what you've seen, what you've witnessed. Thank you for doing that. Mr. Levitt, thank you for representing him. We appreciate that. Now I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Today is our 4th hearing in this select committee. In our previous 3 hearings, we've heard my Republican colleagues and their witnesses downplay the danger of extremism in America, suggesting that the 2020 election was stolen and claimed that January 6th was anything other than an attempted insurrection, anything other than domestic terrorism. From what I can glean about today's hearing, and I'm going to say glean because my Republican colleagues don't really want us to work together. They give us the bare minimum notice for hearings, no subject indicated. We learn who the hearing witnesses is from British tabloids. That's not normal in the House of Representatives. One must wonder, are Republicans scared of giving us the information so that we can do our own due diligence on these conspiracy theories, these ideas that they want to put forward? Indeed, today's hearing will be more of the same. Perhaps they're too far gone to realize that, in fact, this hearing is evidence, as if we needed any more, that MAGA Republicans are a threat to the rule of law in America. Less than 2 months ago, former President Trump, facing mounting investigations into his many alleged crimes, declared that, quote, Republicans in Congress should defund the DOJ and the FBI until they can come to their senses. And we all know that when Trump says jump, the Republicans in the House say, how high? So here we are, on Police Week, watching House Republicans jump to lay the foundation to defund law enforcement. My colleagues on the far right are on a mission to attack, discredit, and ultimately dismantle the FBI. This is defund the police on steroids. As part of their mission, my colleagues have brought in these former agents, men who lost their security clearances because they were a threat to our national security, who, out of malice or ignorance or both, have put partisan agenda above the oath they swore to serve this country and protect its national security. It is everyday American taxpayer who is bearing the burden of this circus-like hearing. A year ago, Republicans promised that if they won control of Congress, they would focus on kitchen table issues like bringing down inflation. Now we got a bait and switch. Instead of trying to make their constituents' lives better, they're wasting time and taxpayer dollars on endless, fruitless string of partisan investigations. Instead of working to make America more secure, they're manufacturing opportunities to attack law enforcement agencies, even and especially on the same week that we are remembering those law enforcement personnel who lost their lives in the line of duty. We are assembled today to hear conspiracy theories and speculations. We're going to hear alternative facts, actions and events taken far out of context. When they lack support for a baseless allegation, get this, my Republican friends will cite the absence of evidence of a cover-up. And any suggestion that Chairman Jordan's witnesses are anything but victims of an oppressive dystopian government will be met with mock outrage. So we all know what we're about to see. The real question, the real thing that Americans need to be focused on is why. My Republican colleagues would like me and others to believe that they've suddenly found religion when it comes to misconduct in law enforcement. Give me a break. When the FBI is rifling through personal correspondence of people of color, when law enforcement tries to push policies to limit the freedom of people practicing a different religion, or unjustly pursuing people in cars who look like Philando Castile or my children, or who are just going about their business, or breaking down the doors of people's homes like Breonna Taylor, do you think my Republican colleagues care about that? They don't bat an eye. But when the FBI investigates conservative Christian white men who are actually threatening violence, suddenly my Republican colleagues are rushing to defund the police. The reason we're here today is because Chairman Jordan wants to make America Trump again. My Republican colleagues aren't here representing their constituents, not my constituents. They're representing Donald Trump. They're acting as his defense attorney, his campaign operative, and everything in between. This committee, this select committee, is a clearinghouse for testing conspiracy theories for Donald Trump to use in his 2024 presidential campaign. What's clear from these hearings is that Donald Trump knows just as well as I do that the danger to him and his MAGA movement is the rule of law. That's why this committee is working so hard to undermine the rule of law. That's why Donald Trump asked Jordan and others on this committee to waste our time and taxpayer money, asked the Speaker of the House to attack the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, for having the audacity to indict the former president on 34 counts of fraud. And that's why this committee hasn't given up its stolen election talking points. And now, here we are today, going after the FBI on Donald Trump's behalf. This is not a committee on the weaponization of government. This is a committee for the weaponization of government. This select committee is clearly focused on undermining law enforcement so extremists can undermine our elections through corruption and control our government through threats of political violence. I hope Democrats as well as Republicans watch and listen this morning, because this hearing will demonstrate far better than any opening statement ever could that outside of Washington, the real divide in America is not between Democrats and Republicans. It's between people who love this country, who believe in the rule of law, who want to follow the law, and those who will fight to make our union more perfect, and the people who want to tear down the rule of law and betray our Constitution for personal as well as political gain. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witnesses. Mr. Garrett O'Boyle. Mr. O'Boyle is a whistleblower, an FBI special agent, most recently in the Wichita resident agency of the Kansas City field office. Prior to becoming an FBI agent, Mr. O'Boyle served our nation as an infantryman in the United States Army for 6 years. In the Army, Mr. O'Boyle was deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. He received numerous service awards, including the Combat Infantryman Badge. Mr. O'Boyle received an honorable discharge from the Army. Upon leaving, Mr. O'Boyle continued his commitment to public service, serving as a police officer in Waukesha, Wisconsin for 4 years. Mr. O'Boyle joined the FBI in 2018. As an FBI agent, Mr. O'Boyle was selected to serve on the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the SWAT team. Mr. O'Boyle graduated cum laude from Marquette University with a degree in criminology and law studies. But the FBI questions his loyalty to the Constitution and to our country. Mr. Friend is a whistleblower and FBI special agent, most recently in the Daytona Beach resident agency of the Jacksonville field office. Prior to becoming an FBI agent in 2014, Mr. Friend served as a police officer in Savannah, Georgia, and Pooler, Georgia. And as an FBI agent, Mr. Friend spent 7 years working human trafficking investigations and investigating crimes against children. Prior to blowing the whistle in 2022, Mr. Friend had received several awards from the FBI for his performance. Mr. Friend is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. And again, after this service to our country, the FBI questions his loyalty to the country. Mr. Allen is a whistleblower and staff operations specialist with the FBI Charlotte field office. Mr. Allen has 20 years of experience as an intelligence professional in the FBI and the United States Armed Services. Prior to joining the FBI, Mr. Allen served in the United States Marine Corps, including service in Iraq, Kuwait, and Japan. In the Marines, Mr. Allen received several awards, including the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. Mr. Allen received an honorable discharge from his Marine Corps duty. And again, the letter we got from the FBI, they're questioning his commitment to our country. I find that astounding. Prior to blowing the whistle, Mr. Allen received several awards from the FBI, including being selected as Employee of the Year for the Charlotte Field Office in 2019. Mr. Allen holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from American Military University. Mr. Tristan Levitt. Mr. Levitt is an attorney and the president of Empower Oversight, an organization dedicated to enhancing independent oversight of government and corporate wrongdoing. Prior to joining Empower Oversight, Mr. Levitt was a Senate-confirmed member of the United States Merit System Protection Board, which adjudicates whistleblower retaliation claims. Mr. Levitt also served as the principal deputy special counsel at the Office of the Special Counsel, which enforces federal whistleblower laws. Earlier in his career, Mr. Levitt was a counsel for Senator Grassley on the Senate Judiciary Committee and staffer on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He's a graduate of Brigham Young University and Georgetown University Law Center and is considered an expert on the whistleblower law. As far as I know, the FBI hasn't questioned his loyalty to the country. We welcome our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show that each witness answered in the affirmative. Thank you. Please be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in approximately 5 minutes. We're going to give you plenty of time. But if you can keep it around 5, great. But if you go over, no worries there. And we will start with Mr. O'Boyle. Mr. O'Boyle, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Jordan, members of the committee, thank you for addressing FBI malfeasance and allowing me to speak today. Aside from that point of gratitude, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, and I'm angry that I have to be here to testify about the weaponization of the FBI and DOJ. Weaponization against not only its own employees, but against those institutions and individuals that are supposed to protect the American people. I'm here today because even though I am wrongfully suspended from the FBI, I remain duty-bound to the American people to play my small role in rectifying these issues. After all, I never swore an oath to the FBI. I swore an oath to the Constitution. I've served my nation and community my entire adult life, first in the United States Army, then as a police officer, and lastly as an FBI special agent. Shortly after high school, I joined the United States Army, where I served in the infantry, and I was quickly promoted through the ranks. I deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I served in the historic 101st Airborne Division. I received the Combat Infantryman's Badge, which is awarded to those infantrymen who engage in ground combat with our nation's enemies. The Army's official motto is, "This will defend." Along with numerous others, I volunteered to serve this nation, risking my life in combat to protect America and her values. I know some of the best men and women this country has to offer. They come from all backgrounds, races, and creeds. They helped mold me into the person I am today. Each was willing to sacrifice, and many did, to protect this great nation. It is our duty to honor their sacrifices by standing up for what is right, regardless of the difficulty. After serving in the Army, I became a police officer. Police officers, like me, are imperfect beings, but we strive to uphold the law and the Constitution. People who go to work every day trying to make their communities better, yet who nonetheless are faced with budget cuts and calls for defunding as we continue spiraling away from law and order as a nation. While serving as a police officer, I finished my bachelor's degree, graduating with honors in criminology and law studies. Shortly thereafter, I began the long road to becoming an FBI special agent, a position I once understood to be the pinnacle of law enforcement and a way to continue to serve this nation and protect and defend the Constitution. During my 4 years as a special agent, I received the highest annual review an employee can receive. I volunteered for, tried out for, and was selected for an FBI SWAT team. I also volunteered for, tried out for, and was selected for a new unit the FBI created. I also received an award for my work on an anti-abortion extremism case. I've been smeared as a malcontent and subpar FBI employee. This smear stands in stark contrast to my life in public service. This smear campaign, disgusting as it is unsurprising. Despite our oath to uphold the Constitution, too many in the FBI aren't willing to sacrifice for the hard right over the easy wrong. They see what becomes of whistleblowers, how the FBI destroys their careers, suspends them under false pretenses, takes their security clearances and pay with no true options for real recourse or remedy. This is by design. It creates an Orwellian atmosphere that silences opposition and discussion. We know what is right to do, yet we too often refuse to do what is right because of the difficulty and suffering it incurs. I couldn't knowingly continue on this path silently without speaking out against the weaponization I witnessed, even if it meant losing my job, my career, my livelihood, my family's home, and now my anonymity. It's up to members of this committee, current and former FBI employees, and indeed all Americans, to ensure that the weaponization of our own government against the people comes to an end, no matter the personal cost. As James Madison prudently opined, in framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. The safeguards currently in place at the FBI are clearly inadequate and must be reworked to protect whistleblowers and others who are inappropriately targeted. The FBI can extract whatever they want from me. I'm willing to bear that burden. I've sworn to defend this country from enemies, both foreign and domestic, even if that means sacrificing my life. I've lived that oath out since first enlisting in the Army, consistently saying, "Here am I, send me." My oath, however, did not include sacrificing the hopes, dreams, and livelihood of my family, my strong, beautiful, and courageous wife, and our 4 sweet and beautiful daughters who have endured this process along with me. In weaponized fashion, the FBI allowed me to accept orders to a new position halfway across the country. They allowed us to sell my family's home. They ordered me to report to the new unit when our youngest daughter was 2 weeks old. Then, on my first day on the new assignment, they suspended me, rendering my family homeless. They refused to release our goods, including our clothes, for weeks. All I wanted to do was serve my country by stopping bad guys and protecting the innocent. To my chagrin, bad guys have begun running parts of the government, making it difficult to continue to serve this nation and protect the innocent. But I, for one, will never stop trying, and I'll never forget my oath. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. God bless you. Mr. Friend, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Jorman. And members of the committee, my name is Stephen Friend. I'm a senior fellow for the Center for Renewing America. Prior to assuming my current position, I was a special agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation for 8.5 years. During that time, I investigated approximately 200 violent crimes, such as aggravated assaults, murder, child abuse, rape, robbery, child molestation, child pornography, and human trafficking. I also served 5 years on an FBI SWAT team and spent 5 years as a local law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia. In August 2022, I made protected whistleblower disclosures to my immediate supervisor, assistant special agents in charge, and special agent in charge about my concerns regarding January 6 investigations assigned to my office. I believed our departures from case management rules established in the FBI's Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide could have undermined potentially righteous prosecutions and may have been part of an effort to inflate the FBI's statistics on domestic extremism. I also voiced concerns that the FBI's use of SWAT and large-scale arrest operations to apprehend suspects who were accused of nonviolent crimes and misdemeanors represented by counsel and who pledged to cooperate with the federal authorities in the event of criminal charges created an unnecessary risk to FBI personnel and public safety. At each level of my chain of command, leadership cautioned that despite my exemplary work performance, whistleblowing placed my otherwise bright future with the FBI at risk. Special agents take an oath to protect the U.S. Constitution. The dangers of federal law enforcement overreach were hammered home to me when I was required to attend trainings at the Holocaust Memorial Museum and MLK Memorial. I cited my oath and training in my conversations with my FBI supervisors. Nevertheless, the FBI weaponized the security clearance processes to facilitate my removal from active duty within 1 month of my disclosures. In addition to an indefinite unpaid suspension, the FBI initiated a campaign of humiliation and intimidation to punish and pressure me to resign. In violation of HIPAA, individuals at the FBI leaked my private medical information to a reporter at the New York Times. In violation of the Privacy Act, the FBI refused to furnish my training records for several months. To date, they only provide a portion of the records, which are essential to obtaining private investigator and firearms licenses in the state of Florida. Even after releasing some of the records, the FBI refuses to confirm their legitimacy to the Florida Department of Agriculture, rendering the few documents they have provided practically useless. The FBI denied my request to seek outside employment in an obvious attempt to deprive me of the ability to support my family. Finally, the FBI Inspection Division imposed an illegal gag order in an attempt to prevent me from communicating with my family and attorneys. Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger. The FBI is incentivized to work against the American people and in dire need of drastic reform, particularly in these areas. The integrated program management system incentivizes the use of inappropriate investigatory processes and tools to achieve arbitrary statistical accomplishments. Mission creep within the National Security Branch has refocused counterterrorism from legitimate foreign actors to political opponents within our borders. The FBI weaponizes process crimes and reinterprets laws to initiate pretextual prosecutions and persecute its political enemies. Bureau intelligence analysis capability increasingly dictates operations, turning the FBI into an intelligence agency with a law enforcement capability. FBI collusion with big tech to gather intelligence on Americans, censor political speech, and target citizens for malicious prosecution. A dysfunctional promotion process fosters a revolving door of inexperienced, ambitious FBI supervisors ascending the management ladder within the agency. FBI informant protocols that are broken and abusive. The FBI skirts the Whistleblower Protection Act and exploits the security clearance revocation process to expel employees who make legally protected disclosures. I am pleased to see the Weaponization Committee is taking testimony from FBI whistleblowers. I would also like to take this opportunity to address correspondence recently received by the subcommittee. Yesterday, May 17, 2023, FBI Acting Assistant Director Christopher Dunham submitted a letter to this subcommittee. Portions of his letter concern the suspension and revocation of my security clearance. Parenthetically, I also received a letter from the FBI Executive Assistant Director Jennifer Moore yesterday, notifying me that my security clearance was revoked. I find the timing of these letters dubious, but leave that up to the subcommittee's determination. Instead, I would like to address and add vital context to the portion of Mr. Dunham's letter pertaining to my alleged violation of Adjudicative Guideline J. Mr. Dunham is referring to an audio recording I created of my August 23, 2022 meeting with Jacksonville Assistant Special Agents in Charge Colt Markowski and Sean Ryan. After making protected whistleblower disclosures to my immediate supervisor in August 19, 2022, ASAC Markowski summoned me to a meeting at the FBI Jacksonville office. ASAC Markowski told me the meeting was intended to be an opportunity to discuss my concerns. I anticipated the meeting might ultimately lead to my executive managers attempting to compel me to participate in an activity which placed public safety at risk. I was concerned ASAC Markowski and ASAC Ryan may threaten adverse actions toward my career as a result of my whistleblower disclosure. Prior to the meeting, I consulted Florida law to confirm that a law enforcement exemption exists for state two-party consent restriction. I decided to record the meeting to memorialize our discussion and my concerns about the FBI's misconduct. When I entered the FBI Jacksonville office building, ASAC Markowski and ASAC Ryan were having a private meeting. I waited for them in a conference room. When they entered, all of us placed our cellular phones on the conference table. As an experienced investigator who has conducted hundreds of recorded interviews, I noted how both ASAC Markowski and ASAC Ryan repeated themselves throughout our discussion and continually insisted I agree to their premise that I was insubordinate and refusing to perform my job. I rebuffed each allegation and repeated that I believed I was fulfilling my oath of office by making my disclosure about the FBI's rule of departures and the inappropriate risk to public safety via aggressive arrest tactics for January 6 subjects. It was my sincere belief that my ASACs were also recording our conversations. In January 2023, I participated in an interview with the FBI Security Division. During that interview, I was asked if I recorded my August 23, 2022 meeting with ASAC Markowski and ASAC Ryan. I answered honestly that I had. Although it would seem to be an obvious and natural follow-up, the FBI Security Division interviewers did not request a copy of the recording. FBI Security Division should be gravely concerned if executive managers threaten subordinate whistleblowers with adverse action. I submitted that this omission by the FBI Security Division solidifies my contention that ASACs Markowski and Ryan created their own recording of our meeting. The FBI was not concerned about potential whistleblower retaliation. The Bureau was only interested in learning if these actions were at risk of exposure. I pray that all members consider the information I and my fellow whistleblowers present. You may think I'm a political partisan. You may think I am a grifter. You may think I'm a conspiracy theorist. It does not matter. Simply put, this committee should avoid the temptation to impugn the character and the motivations of the messengers seated before you. I sacrificed my dream job to share this information with the American people. I humbly ask all the members to do your jobs and consider the merit of what I have presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friend. I appreciate your testimony. Mr. Allen, you are now recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, my name is Marcus Allen. I'm a staff operations specialist for the FBI in the Charlotte Field Office. Due to whistleblower retaliation by the FBI, I've been suspended without pay for over a year. Thank you to the committee for allowing me time today to convey my concerns about the current FBI. In particular, I am concerned, and I believe this committee should also be concerned about the FBI's use of the security clearance process to retaliate against whistleblowers. First, though, just so you know a little bit about me, I served honorably in the United States Marine Corps from 2000 to 2005. I was deployed to Kuwait and served 2 tours in Iraq and contributed to Operation Iraqi Freedom. During my deployments, I was exposed to live enemy fire on numerous occasions, even though I served primarily in analytical and intelligence roles. I was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. I eventually joined the FBI and was Employee of the Year in 2019 in the Charlotte Field Office. As the holder of a top secret security clearance since 2001, I've been trusted with the nation's greatest secrets. So why am I here today? Despite my history of unblemished service to the United States, the FBI suspended my security clearance, accusing me of actually being disloyal to my country. This outrageous and insulting accusation is based on unsubstantiated accusations that I hold conspiratorial views regarding the events of January 6, 2021, and that I allegedly sympathize with criminal conduct. I do not. I was not in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, played no part in the events of January 6th, and I condemn all criminal activity that occurred. Instead, it appears that I was retaliated against because I forwarded information to my superiors and others that questioned the official narrative of the events of January 6th. As a result, I was accused of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. Because I did this, the FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States. Since I was suspended, there's been a dearth of communication from the FBI, with interactions seemingly only being forced by actions from my counsel or members of Congress. For example, I was not even interviewed by anyone from the FBI until May of 2022. I was suspended in January of 2022. This interaction with the FBI happened on the heels of a public statement from a congressional member in early May of 2022. The member made statements indicating the FBI was conducting a purge of employees with conservative viewpoints. Within hours of the public statements, my counsel received a phone call from the FBI wanting to see if they could conduct an interview. I promptly complied and did an interview with investigators within a week. Throughout this ordeal, I and my counsel have responded quickly, whereas the FBI has only stonewalled. I have filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, which is pending, seeking to recover my livelihood and restore my good name. Recently, my counsel filed a whistleblower complaint with the Justice Department's Office of Inspector General. The complaint set forth retaliation through misuse of the security clearance process, as well as reprisal against me for making a protected disclosure. Interestingly enough, in the wake of filing the complaint, I received correspondence from the FBI indicating that my clearance had now been formally revoked. This occurred after filing my complaint with the IG. The new and baseless claims made in the letter had never been brought up prior to the issuance of the security clearance revocation letter. I have never had the opportunity to defend myself. I only had one interview with the FBI, which occurred a year ago after apparent prompting from Congress. In that interview, the investigators, towards the end of the interview, uttered in response to my exasperation, "Don't sue us." This has been a trying circumstance for me and my family. It has been more than a year since the FBI took my paycheck from me, and we're getting financially crushed. My family and I have been surviving on early withdrawals from our retirement accounts, while the FBI has ignored my request for approval to obtain outside employment during the review of my security clearance. We have lost our federal health insurance coverage, and there's apparently no end in sight. I'm hopeful scrutiny from Congress and from the Inspector General will deter the FBI from abusing the security clearance process to retaliate against others the way it's retaliated against me. This is why I filed a whistleblower retaliation complaint with the IG and why I'm here today to answer your questions. Thank you. And I also have a rebuttal if the member will allow me to. Thank you. This is a rebuttal of the FBI correspondence just recently sent to the committee in reference to my clearance suspension and now revocation. Calumny is not a word to be thrown around lightly. In regards to the FBI's treatment of me, it is fitting. This is conduct unbecoming of an organization given the public trust. Think about that. My treatment, without a doubt, has sent a chilling effect through what semblance remains of an analytical cadre. This was not a thorough investigation in my regard. I've not been afforded an opportunity to appropriately defend myself or confront the claims made against me. Interestingly, the revocation language citing Guideline E is the first instance I've ever seen referring to this specific guidance in my case. The claim that I obstructed a lawful investigation is dubious, and I do not recall ever being admonished for such an infraction. In regards to the paragraph in the letters highlighting an alleged incident with a special agent, I have no idea what it refers to. This alleged incident did not come up at all during the alleged thorough investigation. Again, as with Guideline E, this is the first appearance of this allegation during this entire ordeal. Next, I do not recall ever receiving a directive to stop sending information in regards to the 6th. Why would you not want any more information sent to you? Furthermore, the September 29, 2021 email referred to in the letter is part of a protected disclosure, and this correspondence represents documentary evidence of a protected disclosure as a source of retaliation and reprisal. Alternative analysis and differing viewpoints should be welcomed, even though they may not be ultimately acted upon by the actual decision makers. Groupthink should not be an ethos championed in an investigative organization. To shut down differing viewpoints is the end of any analytical or investigative body. It sends a chilling effect across the workforce and does not allow for intellectual freedom, which is vital to any investigative body seeking out the truth. It is possible the ire towards my perspective could have been due to folks wanting to maintain invincible ignorance instead of consciously and mentally transferring over to willful ignorance. This is the end of my statement. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Levitt.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for the invitation to testify today. I currently serve as the president of Empower Oversight. We're honored to represent Stephen Friend and Marcus Allen. FBI whistleblowers have second-class status compared to those in most federal agencies. When Congress adopted the modern system of whistleblower protections, it prohibited retaliation against FBI whistleblowers. But it gave them none of the process that other federal law enforcement agencies received, like the DEA, the ATF, U.S. Marshals, and Secret Service. Whistleblowers of those agencies can all file retaliation complaints with the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, an independent agency. FBI whistleblowers cannot. Whistleblowers at those agencies can all appeal retaliation to the Merit Systems Protection Board, on which I recently served. Until just last year, FBI whistleblowers could not. They finally got that right in last December's NDAA. But Congress must ensure that this new jurisdiction applies as intended to all FBI retaliation cases. Many have been wending their way for years through DOJ's long and extensive process. But the laws prohibiting retaliation have been on the books that entire time. The FBI cannot claim now that these are new rights just because they now have to justify their actions before the MSPB. Time has demonstrated, in my opinion, that it was a mistake to exclude the FBI from the standard whistleblower protection process. It discourages integrity and encourages deceit and even corruption. Congress should treat the FBI the same as all other federal law enforcement agencies, eliminating a special exception and giving its employees access to OSC to investigate retaliation. The hardworking employees of the FBI deserve equal protection of the law. The FBI's latest troubling practice is suspending security clearances to retaliate against whistleblowers. Mr. Friend and Mr. Allen, along with Mr. O'Boyle, are just several public examples of this trend. When the FBI suspends a clearance, it also immediately suspends the employee indefinitely, without pay. To make matters worse, it holds them and their families hostage by requiring them to get permission to take another job, permission the FBI routinely denies. Congress needs to ensure the FBI stops this abuse. In light of all these obstacles for FBI whistleblowers, you would think Congress would do everything that it could to welcome their disclosures here. But FBI employees coming to Congress have unfortunately been shamefully treated by Democrats on this committee. It's one thing to hear allegations and find them unpersuasive or even distasteful. An office can even ignore those allegations if they choose. That's their prerogative. But to go out and actively smear the individuals making disclosures is far worse. That's what the Democrats on this committee did when they released a March 2nd report entitled GOP Witnesses, What Their Disclosures Indicate About the State of the Republican Investigations. That report was inaccurate, both on the law and on the facts. The law doesn't define the term whistleblower. Instead, it protects from retaliation individuals who engage in protected activity. For over a century, simply making disclosures of any information to Congress has been a protected activity. Furthermore, an appropriations rider in effect at this time prohibits money from paying the salary of any federal employee who prohibits or prevents any other federal employee, such as FBI whistleblowers, from communicating with Congress. The Democrats' report denied whistleblower status to individuals engaged in the precise activity the legislative branch has considered protected since 1912. The report's reliance on evidence for whistleblower status is also misplaced. Simply communicating a reasonable belief of misconduct is protected whistleblower activity under the law. This applies regardless of whether the whistleblower produces evidence at that time backing up their allegations. Only protecting whistleblower disclosures accompanied by conclusive evidence, as the Democrats seem to require, would have disastrous consequences for retaliation throughout the federal government. My experience working for Congress was that whistleblowers brought allegations, and where the committees found those allegations worthy of further follow-up and congressional action, we conducted investigations. No one expects a private citizen to investigate a crime before going to the police, and we didn't expect a whistleblower to investigate their own agency. That's also essentially how the law for remedying retaliation through the MSPB is set up, where making a non-frivolous allegation leads to discovery, interviews, and more. Simply put, the burden isn't on the whistleblower to produce the evidence at the outset. That's why there's an investigative process. The Democrats' report also got the facts wrong. For example, they claim DOJ IG declined to investigate Mr. Friend's claim, when in fact DOJ IG will be interviewing Mr. Friend tomorrow and has an ongoing investigation. DOJ IG says no one from the Democrat staff ever contacted their office to verify this claim before issuing their report. Inexcusably, a number of mainstream media sources simply repeated the Democrats' wrong information uncritically without bothering to check the facts for themselves, which is why there were multiple retractions. FBI whistleblowers have traveled a hard road over the years. They should be treated by Congress the same as other whistleblowers. Issuing reports smearing those who come forward from the FBI will unquestionably deter others from taking that same path. Congress must have firsthand information about how federal agencies are operating to perform its constitutional duty of oversight. Why would future whistleblowers bring their disclosures to Congress if they think they might be treated like this? Attacking whistleblowers hurts this committee and others, the House of Representatives as an institution, and Congress as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Wyoming for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan. I want to thank our witnesses today for their service to our country, service which includes their willingness to provide protected disclosures to ensure that the federal government is held accountable for wrongdoing. We've heard their testimony, and my colleagues will ask more questions so we can further understand the wrongdoing they have exposed and the retaliation that they have now suffered. As this hearing gets underway, I want to focus on the cultural changes that have occurred within the FBI over the last 20+ years, fundamental changes that have led to the political capture of our flagship law enforcement agencies, and with the Democrats using these agencies as their own personal political hacks. What happened that allowed for politicization to permeate every facet of the FBI? Well, there are many things, but I think we must focus on the information that was provided by retired FBI Special Agent Thomas Baker, who testified before the Select Subcommittee earlier this year. Mr. Baker explained that in the aftermath of 9/11, and upon being embarrassed by being scolded by President Bush for not being able to stop it from happening, then FBI Director Robert Mueller made the decision to fundamentally change the FBI from a law enforcement body to an intelligence-driven one. Such a redirection of the very purpose of the FBI resulted in centralizing its power in Washington, D.C., while placing less emphasis on the field offices. Changes that replaced agent executives in the headquarters with so-called professionals from the outside, and stockpiling more and more power in D.C. and away from the country that it serves. 9/11 was a watershed moment for many reasons. It was a horrific terrorist attack on the shores of the United States of America. But our government's ultimate response is also tragic. And by eventually finding a way to target not the terrorists, but American citizens, which is where the FBI and DOJ are at this point in time. Both the DOJ and the FBI, they've used the FISA court to obtain illegitimate surveillance authority. They've targeted political campaigns with which they disagree. They have created a Russia hoax to cripple a duly elected president. They have targeted Catholics for exercising their faith. They've targeted parents for wanting to protect their children. And so what we can say in short is that the eye of Sauron has turned inward, and it is burning with a white-hot intensity that seeks to destroy everything in its path. What I think we can say is that as the DOJ and FBI have become more political, they have amassed more power. And as they have amassed more power, they have become more political. This is a vicious cycle that must be stopped. To be blunt, the leadership of the FBI and the DOJ are corrupt. I will name names. Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland are corrupt. They know it, we know it, and the American people know it. Congress needs whistleblowers like you so that we can conduct our oversight and correct course on these abusive federal agencies. And sadly, what we've already seen and what we will continue to see today is that the Democrats will not focus on the substance of what these brave men are exposing, or engage in a discussion about how to protect our constitutional rights and institutions from the tyrants that are running these agencies. Instead, what we will see is that they will deflect, they will call the witnesses names, they will scream MAGA, an extremist, at the top of their lungs. They will attempt to impugn your integrity, but make no mistake, they are simply trying to cover up the unforgivable and the indefensible, which is the creation of a two-tiered justice system based on political beliefs and the corruption of our political elites. I encourage the American people to listen to these witnesses, to read the Durham report, to study what is happening with the FBI and the DOJ, and to listen and to sift through the lies and recognize that this nonsense must stop, or we're going to lose the greatest republic that's ever existed in the history of the world. Thank you for your willingness to come here. Thank you for your willingness to stand on the wall. Thank you for your willingness to tell the truth about what these agencies are doing. America thanks you as well. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Sanchez.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of order, I understand and we have been made aware from what you stated in your opening statement, as well as in a press conference earlier, that Mr. Allen did meet with you all and might have testimony that was transcribed. Neither, and I understand that he stated that he did not feel comfortable meeting with the Democrats. He's comfortable being here today in this open forum. We will be questioning him. Will you give us a copy of that testimony that was transcribed of your discussions with him?
That'll be up to Mr. Allen.
But you are in possession of them, aren't you?
Sure are.
So why would you not give them to us?
Mr. Allen's a whistleblower and he didn't want that to happen.
He didn't want, but he's comfortable here in open discussion with us today?
Sure is. You can ask him questions if you want.
You don't share your information with the minority? Nope. The whistle. No,
so you're not sharing information that you've obtained with the
whistleblower saw what you did with Mr. Friend and others, the false information you gave the press, so much so that they had to issue corrections.
The whistleblower doesn't decide that. The committee decides it.
And we've decided.
And you've decided that you're not going to share.
Mr. Allen is here. You can ask him questions. And we can talk about the testimony, but right now you're not getting the testimony. Mr. Allen's here to testify.
And you'll give us the testimony when? After he's left, or at no point in time, or when will we have that? That's only for the Republicans. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady did not state a point of order.
The point of order was, will he be giving us the testimony of the witness that is here before us, and that you have information of that you are not sharing with the Democrats?
Mr. Chairman, I move that her...
Told you this was going to be spicy this morning.
A member, the gentleman from California is right. She's not stated a point of order. The 5-minute questioning time.
So the point of order is I would like the testimony. I move that you give us the testimony of the individual.
Move to table.
Here.
There's a motion been made. It's been moved to table. Chair, we will call...
We don't, Mr. Chairman, we don't have to table.
We asked for a recorded vote.
For that.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a recorded vote?
No, it's not a proper point of order.
You just did a motion to table.
No.
Your side just did a motion to table.
Not a proper motion. The chair has recognized the gentlelady from California, Ms. Sanchez, for her 5 minutes of questioning.
A point of inquiry. Can I ask
Oh, marble mouth.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Can I ask
marble
the
mouth.
chairman a question?
After Ms. Sanchez, I'll gladly take your question. Ms. Sanchez, and we will restore the 5 minutes for Ms. Sanchez.
I find it incredible that evidence that one side has garnered is not going to be shared with the other side. That is not how committees work.
Gee, I wonder where they learned that
Chairman
trick from.
Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, I think it's important that we recognize this hearing for what it actually is. Make no mistake, this hearing is a vehicle to legitimize the events of January 6th and the people who perpetrated it. And why? Because Donald Trump is running for president.
So that's going to be their
again.
talking point.
And if you normalize the events
Just
of
watch.
January 6th, if you repeat his election fraud lies, then maybe he doesn't seem quite so extreme. Maybe it will be easier to overturn a free and fair election the next time. For those of you who have forgotten, on January 6th, a mob of people who believed Donald Trump's lie that the 2020 election was stolen stormed the Capitol, seeking to stop the certification of the 2020 presidential election. They erected a gallows on the lawn just outside this room, and they ran through the halls looking to find and hang the Vice President of the United States. It was a shocking moment of political violence, and many of us on this dais, including myself, were there that day. We all felt the fear of knowing that there were people roaming the Capitol looking to kill us. But clearly, some of us have quickly forgotten that. I've heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle suggest that, quote, the FBI was participating in the insurrection. They called the rioters who attacked the Capitol quote-unquote peaceful patriots, and quote-unquote political prisoners. And they described the violence on January 6th as akin to a quote-unquote normal tourist visit. It was not. Last year, the Judiciary Committee
Wonder how many
even had
times
to
she can
entertain a
slam the table.
resolution on the repeatedly discredited Ray Earp's conspiracy theory. Mr. Allen, your security clearance was first suspended on January 10th, 2022. Is that correct? Yes or no will suffice. And the FBI's reason behind your suspension was because it found you to have, quote, espoused conspiratorial views both orally in writing and promoted unreliable information which indicates support for the events of January 6th. Is that correct, yes or no?
That is the language that they placed on the letter.
That's a yes then. Do you believe it's important for federal agents to have allegiance to the United States, yes or no?
It is absolutely important that personnel
I'll take
for the
that as a
government
yes.
have allegiance
Do
to the
you
United
believe
States.
you should have allegiance to the United States to possess a security clearance, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Do you believe your obligation as a federal agent should supersede your First Amendment right, yes or no?
Can you please rephrase the question, ma'am?
Do you believe that your obligation as a federal agent should supersede your First Amendment right, yes or no?
I don't know. Can you please rephrase the question again, ma'am?
Do you believe that you have an obligation to serve as a federal agent regardless of what your personal political beliefs are?
Yes, I have an
Thank you.
obligation to
Thank
serve
you.
the United
Do you
States.
believe that FBI agents should be permitted to express support for individuals who stormed the Capitol on January 6th? Yes or no?
I believe agents have to do their jobs, ma'am.
Do you believe that agents should be permitted to express their support for individuals who stormed the Capitol on January 6th? Yes or no? It's a simple question.
No, you're supposed to be apolitical, ma'am, and do your job
So
as
that
an
is a
FBI
no?
person. You're supposed to be apolitical and do your job.
I'm asking for a simple yes or no.
Can you please
Not a
rephrase the
difficult question. Do you believe that FBI agents should be permitted to express support for individuals who stormed the Capitol on January 6th?
You should not be voicing support for criminal conduct. You have
Okay,
to do
thank
your
you.
job apolitically, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, have you ever used Twitter? Yes or no?
I have utilized Twitter, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is your account at Marcus A970-50645?
That is absolutely not my account.
Okay, that's not your account. Well, on December 5th, 2022, an account under the name Marcus Allen retweeted a tweet that said,
That
quote,
is not my account, ma'am.
you haven't let me finish the question,
Might have been
sir.
the football player.
You haven't let me finish the question. And the time is mine. On December 5th, 2022, an account under the name of Marcus Allen retweeted a tweet that said, quote, Nancy Pelosi staged January 6th, retweet if you agree, end quote. Do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
That is, I don't, no, ma'am. That's not my account at all. I have
I'm
no
asking
idea.
whether you agree with that statement, yes or no?
Can you please rephrase the
Yeah.
statement?
Do you think
Time of the
that
gentlelady
Nancy
has
Pelosi
expired.
staged January 6th?
Good,
I
cut
just
her
want you
off.
to
He'll answer,
this
he'll
last
answer.
question.
Yeah, he'll answer. I'm just telling you your time's up.
Do you believe that Nancy Pelosi, do you agree with the statement that this person tweeted that Nancy Pelosi staged January 6th? Yes or no?
don't- No.
Thank you. I yield back.
Chair, recognize the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefani.
Yield to the chair.
Excuse me,
I
Mr.
think-
Chair, I think you were going to indulge
I had to.
the Congresswoman from Florida and her point of inquiry.
Let's just bang on the
gentlelady
table.
from Florida is recognized.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding
Now
that,
we got Marble
What's your-
Mouth
what's your-
back.
What are you, are you making a point of order?
no, I'm asking you a question,
Okay,
a point of inquiry.
okay.
It's my understanding that the minority in this committee under the rules is entitled to the same testimony, information, documents that the majority is entitled to.
Funny how their
So,
rules just totally
I'm not-
change when
I'm not
they're in the
aware that you're
minority.
able to withhold
How many years now? Was it
information
4
from the
years that they were
minority
in the
we would
majority?
need to use to
No.
prepare
We had to
for-
deal with all
When it
their
comes to
crap.
whistleblowers, you're not. And I would just remind the committee,
aren't
remind
whist-
everyone, look, when
Mr.
it comes to
Chairman, that's not
whistleblowers,
right.
you are not.
That's not right.
It's shocking that the
That is
gentleman.
not right.
It's shocking
And in
that the
fact,
gentleman.
You talk so much about the
Mr. Chairman,
whistleblower and the impeachment.
It's shocking that the
We
gentleman
gave you
from New York
all of
would
the
state
information
that
we had.
when you were part
Yes,
of an
we gave you
investigation
all
with an
of the
anonymous
information you
whistleblower.
had.
We have.
Chairman, these
Mr.
individuals
Chairman,
haven't been declared
I can't hear
whistleblowers.
5 people at once. Could we
know.
have regular
Okay,
order?
Mr. Chairman,
The chair
I'm,
recognizes it's,
I'm inquiring, and I was not
and I've
finished
told you
And you're a pain in the
that
ass,
when
lady.
it comes to whistleblowers, you are not entitled to it. That's
These
at the discretion of
individuals-
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, these
And he said
individuals have been determined
he has
not to be
agreed to that.
whistleblowers. These are not whistleblowers. They've been determined by the agency not to be whistleblowers. Are you deciding that they're whistleblowers?
Yes, the law decides. Did you not listen to Mr. Levitt's testimony? Did you not read the law? The
His
law
attorney
decides
is
that they are
asserting-
whistleblowers.
his attorney
the
is
chair
asserting that
recognizes
they are
the gentlelady
whistleblowers.
from
The
New
law
York.
has not
The
determined
gentlelady
that they
from New
are
York has been
whistleblowers.
recognized.
The law has not determined they are whistleblowers. His attorney is just asserting that.
Gentlelady from New
I
York.
swear to God. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have lost my voice. I'm yielding to Mr. Gates.
I thank the gentlelady
Okay, I'll be
not only
quiet.
for yielding, but for her extensive work on these issues, not only during our hearings, but during the many depositions we've taken to develop evidence and to bring it forward for the majority, the minority, and all of the country.
Did you give us that evidence?
I know that if the gentlelady from
Are you going to
New
give
York
us that evidence?
was able to speak, that she'd certainly be eager to do so. Mr. Allen, we just astonishingly heard a Democrat on this committee question your allegiance to the United States. How many tours in Iraq did you do?
I did 2 tours in Iraq, sir.
And for how many decades have you held a security clearance?
For 2 decades, sir.
Ever been called into question before?
No, sir.
And you also received the Employee of the Year Award for the Charlotte Field Office, is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Did you receive any medals during your service for the Marine Corps and the United States Navy?
I did, sir. As a member of the Marine Corps, I received 2, a Navy Commendation Medal and a Navy Achievement Medal.
Seems to me your allegiance to the United States is pretty well established over multiple decades, wearing the uniform, fighting for our country, and I am proud that you continue to fight for our country as a whistleblower here, making a disclosure to the United States Congress. And Mr. Allen, is it your belief that you were retaliated against because you shared an email that questioned the truthfulness of FBI Director Christopher Wray?
Yes, sir.
And you believed that he wasn't truthful based on testimony he'd given to the United States Senate, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And in that testimony to the Senate, you believed that Christopher Wray indicated that there were no confidential informants and no FBI assets that were present at the Capitol on January 6th that were part of the violent riot. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Please play the video. We're now going to hear from George Hill, who worked at the Boston field office.
The SSA in Boston said they were going to a political rally, which is First Amendment protected activity. No, we're not uploading. We're not starting cases on these people. To which they said, well, we're going to call your SAC. And the SSA said, go right ahead. Because when you're pushing back, you know, you want to make sure that you have your 6 covered. So the SAC and the ASAC were intimately aware of these kinds of exchanges that were going on. And again, to his credit, Joe Bonavolante said, no, we're not opening up cases on people who went to a rally. And I forgot a key part. The SSA for CT2 said, happy to do it. Show us where they were inside the Capitol and we'll look into it. To which WFO said, we can't show you those videos unless you can tell us the exact time and place those individuals were inside the Capitol. To which the SSA responded back, and I was privy to these conversations firsthand. Why can't you show us? Why can't you just send us, give us access to the 11,000 hours of video that's available? Because there may be UC's undercover officers or CHS's confidential human sources on those videos whose identity we need to protect.
So, Mr. Allen, you got retaliated against for the very thing, for saying the very thing that the Washington field office was telling Boston, when the Boston field office was saying, we're not going to go and investigate people that just showed up at a rally without sufficient criminal predicate. The Washington field office told Boston, well, you know what? We can't give you the evidence because it might disclose the very CIs and UCs that you are concerned about. But that doesn't surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle, does it?
No, sir.
And the reason it doesn't surprise you is that in a different part of the country, you saw that same pressure from the Washington field office. And did they ever try to get you to do something that was outside the normal order of law enforcement activity?
Yes, sir.
And what did the Washington field office try to get you to do that violated the law and regulations?
They tried to get me to serve a federal grand jury subpoena when there was no proper predicate to do so.
And the reason there was no predicate was because it was based on an anonymous tip, right?
That's correct.
And time and again, the Washington field office was trying to pressure you without corroboration to go start process on people. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And so while I agree that January 6th was a violent day, a bad day, a day that nobody wants to relive, violence on January 6th doesn't justify weaponizing the government against people who were innocent and did nothing wrong. Thank you for blowing the whistle on that. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a sincere point of inquiry. Rule 11, Clause 2.
Gentleman is not recognized.
I have a question about the rules.
Mr. Lynch for 5 minutes.
It's a point of order, a question about the rules.
Point of order. State your point of order.
The point of order is why does Rule 11, Clause 2, subsection E1A not apply to this subcommittee? I can read for you. Each committee shall keep a complete record of all committee action, which shall include, in the case of a meeting or hearing transcript, a substantially verbatim account of remarks actually made during the proceedings, subject only to some technical things. Such records shall be the property of the House, and each member, delegate, and the resident commissioner shall have access thereto. Why does that not apply? Where is the whistleblower exception in the rules of Congress that says that does not apply?
It's the prerogative of the committee to decide.
No, it's not. It's the rules of the House.
We have the whistleblower testimony. The whistleblower does not wish that to be made available to the Democrats at this time.
The whistleblower doesn't make committee rules, sir.
Mr. Lynch is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, is the ruling of the chair always unquestioned, or do we have a vote on how some of these issues are decided?
If you state a proper point of order and there's some kind
I just did state a point of order.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes of question.
Mr. Friend, I want to ask some questions about surrounding the circumstances of the removal of your clearance by the FBI.
He's looking for the January 6th
Mr. Friend, I'd like
talking
to
points.
ask you about your move to the domestic terrorism unit. You originally transferred to Daytona from the FBI's Omaha field office, Sioux City Residence Agency in June 2021, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force at the end of September 2021, correct?
Yes, I was reassigned.
And you had been exclusively working on child sex abuse material known as CSAM cases, is that correct?
Prior to that point, yes.
And that was before you moved to the JTTF, isn't that right?
Yes.
Did you stop working on child abuse cases after October 1st, 2021?
No, I did not.
Well, in fact, the FBI planned to find a replacement for you when you moved from one position to the other, is that correct?
Which office are you referring to?
So, when you were moved from the child sexual abuse cases and moved to the JTTF, you were informed that the FBI would find a replacement for your other position. Was that correct?
No, that's not correct at all. I was told that those cases were going to be considered a local matter going forward. They would not be resourced, and that I was going to be reassigned to work on domestic terrorism cases. At the time, my supervisor retired, and his interim told me there was not enough work to do. So until a full-time replacement could come in to continue to work on the child pornography investigations and make myself available for domestic terrorism cases. And then when my new supervisor arrived early in 2022, I explained that arrangement to him, and he agreed that that was the best use of my time even though I was told to, on my timesheet, account for my actions as being solely devoted to domestic terrorism. I was in a situation where I was essentially only working child pornography and human trafficking cases.
I just want to point out that in your interview with the committee, you stated that you were told you could balance both until the permanent replacement arrived. That was during your transcribed interview. Are you restating that or disputing that now?
I'm not disputing that. I was unofficially said, just keep doing what you're doing, but on paper and on your timesheet, we're going to put you down as a domestic terrorism agent.
You said here that they told you could balance both responsibilities until your replacement arrived. Are you disputing that now?
I'm disputing that there was no replacement that was going to be arriving, ever. I was told that that violation was not going to be worked after I was moved over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And subsequently,
But here you're saying that you were allowed to do both jobs until your replacement arrived. So your assumption then was not that the replacement was not going to arrive, right?
Are you talking about a replacement as for my supervisor or a replacement for me?
For the responsibilities that you were doing under the child sex abuse cases.
There was no replacement that was going to arrive in our office for that. Those cases were going to be no longer worked.
That would be a conjecture on your part at that point, right?
No, I was told that.
Okay. You continued to work the child abuse cases until you were suspended in 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you even received an award for your CSAM work in July 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, you got this award after you took on all the child exploitation cases for the local sheriff's officer earlier that same year, while also working your JTTF responsibilities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You took on the role of a full-time employee assigned to work child abuse investigation cases, correct?
I took on the role of whatever I was needed to work. I made myself available to work domestic terrorism, but there was not enough work to do.
So could you tell us that you were reassigned, and so first you tell us that you were reassigned and told that the CSAM cases weren't a priority. Then you tell us that not only did they plan on replacing you, they let you continue working those cases until you were suspended. Is that correct?
Yes, it was no longer a priority on paper. This is the way that the FBI allocates its manpower resources. So on paper, I was not supposed to be recording my work on those cases. But then within my office, which was not in the Jacksonville headquarters, my frontline supervisor agreed that my time was better spent working on CSAM cases.
All right, Mr. Chairman, my time has expired.
Time has expired. The chair represents the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all our gentlemen for appearing before us today and coming forward. I want to thank you again for your courage today and also for your service to our nation. And as we predicted, our Democrat colleagues have immediately opened up with claims of conspiracy theories, MAGA extremism, mock outrage. Seems the only ones displaying mock outrage up here today are, in fact, the Democrats. Because according to them, journalists who appear before us aren't journalists, and you here today are not whistleblowers, but we in fact know that you are. But interesting times. The line about Republicans defunding police, that one seems to be particularly special because, respectfully to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as the wife of a SWAT medic, as the wife of a first responder currently who has served our community for the last 16 years, I can tell you with certainty that no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop. No one. And I see from you nodding your head that you agree with that sentiment. It is inaccurate and wrong to make that assumption that Republicans want to defund police. It is false. Because forcing a political agenda down the throats of our hardworking men and women of the FBI with the threat and then subsequent follow-through of retaliation because they are whistleblowers, because they didn't want to break the law, because they knew that it was wrong to target Americans without cause, and they swore an oath to the United States Constitution, not to a political party. That makes them whistleblowers. That makes them courageous for coming forward and telling the truth. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you all to please turn on your microphones because we're going to go really fast, okay? Mr. Friend, during your service with the FBI, you served on the FBI SWAT team, correct?
Yes.
As you heard, my husband is a SWAT medic and has been part of joint operations with the FBI. So I would like to know, what is the threshold for these call-outs? And can you briefly detail the type of crimes warranted for an FBI SWAT team call-out?
There's a threat matrix, the SWAT matrix, in order to utilize the tactical team, but it could be as easy as somebody being in possession of a firearm or a request from a local agency just to use the FBI SWAT team.
Okay, so Mr. Friend, your security clearance was suspended by the FBI after raising concerns for the use of excessive force with regard to the use of FBI SWAT teams to your direct supervisor, correct?
Yes.
Would you consider this retaliation?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. O'Boyle, you were suspended without pay from the FBI on September 23rd, correct?
I was initially suspended on the 26th. The suspension of pay came a little bit later.
Thank you for that clarification. You had raised concerns to your chain of command when no action was taken, that you reported these concerns then to Congress, correct?
Correct.
Once you contacted Congress, you were then suspended. Your top secret security clearance was then suspended for those protected disclosures to Congress, correct?
Correct.
That seems like retaliation, no?
That's to me.
Okay, Mr. Allen, you were suspended from the FBI without pay on January 10th, correct?
That is correct.
You were suspended because you sent links to your squad to provide situational awareness about the FBI investigation on January 6th, correct?
Yes.
Yes or no? Wasn't open source searches and sharing of information part of the duties of your job?
Yes.
And subsequently, after doing your job and your supervisors not liking the tone of the open source articles you provided because it didn't fit the FBI's narrative, your security clearance was revoked, correct? To all our whistleblowers, yes or no, do you believe that the retaliation pattern has a cooling effect on other agents from coming forward or speaking up? Yes or no, Mr. O'Boyle?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you believe that the FBI is purposefully hostile to you for that reason, to keep agents from speaking up?
Yes.
Yes, without question.
Yes.
So I think it's clear we have a pattern here. If you speak up about the abuses you are seen as an agent, or are sharing information that may not fall in line with the FBI's political narrative, you will be suspended without pay, have your security clearance revoked, and your life will be turned upside down. It's pretty clear that the MO is if you don't comply, they will retaliate. If you don't agree with the political agenda, you get suspended. And they do it in such a way to deter others from speaking up and speaking out. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the weaponization of government. That is the weaponization of government, and that is why we are here today. Not because we have a political agenda, not because we are here to go over events of the past. We want to fix it. We have to expose it, stop it, and prevent it from happening again. That is why we are here. These men are whistleblowers. The gentlemen who came before us in previous hearings, they were journalists. And just because you don't address them as such does not mean that they are not who they say they are. They have been retaliated against. And regardless of your party affiliation, this behavior is unacceptable, and we need to stop it. Republicans, Democrats, independents alike, this is a concern we should all share. This is the weaponization of government, and it is our job, our constitutional duty to stop it. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Wasserman Schultz.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this document that clearly indicates the questions of allegiance to the United States on the part of Mr. Allen, and that were specifically the reasons for the revocation of his security clearance, in spite of the gentlelady from Florida's assertions to the contrary. Thank you. Mr. Friend, I find some humor in the irony of Republicans inviting you here the same week Congress
She's the one I
is
find
focused
most
on honoring
offensive,
law
in case you
enforcement.
were wondering.
You've repeatedly made calls to undermine our law enforcement agencies. Since being rightly suspended, you've led Republican calls to defund law enforcement, recently describing the FBI as a feckless garbage institution. Since joining Twitter in November, no less than 40 times you called for our brave law enforcement personnel to be defunded. You even urged local police to sabotage criminal investigations by urging citizens to, and I quote, pressure your sheriffs to refuse to cooperate with FBI investigations. That is not only reckless advice, it's a recipe for allowing more criminals to run loose in our neighborhoods. Perhaps Chairman Jordan can explain why Republicans are promoting defunding law enforcement and increased crime before our subcommittee today. But Mr. Friend, your motivations appear to be today crystal clear. For months, you've pressured Republicans to call you to a hearing. In fact, in December, you said Chairman Jordan and Republicans took your complaint of alleged FBI wrongdoing and, quote, used it for campaign rocket fuel and 4-minute appearances on Fox News. And I'll admit, you're right. Republicans are using you, but it goes both ways. You're engaging in the self-promotion of your new book that's about to be released. And what great timing to be on TV and in Congress right before your book tour starts. It's quite coincidental. But let's try to move past your financial exploitations and talk about your objection to the use of a SWAT team to arrest a January 6th suspect in August of 2022. You repeatedly stated that you objected to the use of a SWAT team for the arrest of Tyler Quinton Bench, a man who was involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Mr. Friend, you did not participate in any decisions about the use of the SWAT team, nor were you a member of that SWAT team, correct? Just yes or no, please.
I was not a member of that SWAT team.
And you didn't participate in any decisions about the use of that SWAT team, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. You also testified that being a gun owner is a reason why a SWAT team could be used to arrest a suspect, according to the SWAT team official protocols. Mr. Friend, I'd like to ask you to take a look at the screen. Those are on the screen are two images of the only member of the 3 percenters arrested in your area that day. For those who don't know, the Anti-Defamation League describes the 3 percenters as a militia movement with, quote, a track record of criminal activity ranging from weapons violations to terrorist plots and attacks. As you can see in the pictures of Mr. Bench at the Capitol on January 6th, he's in full tactical gear, wearing chemical irritant canisters on his tactical vest and a black radio and antenna on his left, with a GoPro-style camera mounted on his right shoulder. The FBI knew Mr. Bench to be both armed and dangerous. The good men and women within federal, state, and local law enforcement know that making the right decision on bringing qualified backup to dangerous situations has life or death consequences. It's a decision that has particularly resonance for law enforcement in my own community. A little over a year before Mr. Bench was arrested, 2 FBI agents in my district in Sunrise, Florida, were shot and killed on the front doorstep while trying to serve an arrest warrant on child pornographers. They were just trying to do their jobs, protecting the American people, when the suspect opened fire and started shooting from inside. In fact, these brave agents who work for what you call a feckless and garbage institution lost their life doing the very work you claim it neglects, chasing down people who exploit children. So yes or no, Mr. Friend, knowing what you know now about Mr. Bench, that he was known to be heavily armed and a member of a terrorist group, was it appropriate for the FBI to use a SWAT team as a precaution to protect FBI personnel and other law enforcement officers that day? Yes or no?
I can't answer that with a yes or no. I can give you a little bit of context.
I'd like to know whether you still think it was inappropriate.
I've arrested over 150 violent criminals in my career, never had to use a SWAT team to do it.
Okay.
The reason for that is because
On that
individuals
day,
were
yes or
cooperative
no,
with us.
reclaiming my time, can you give me a yes or no answer, or even indicate whether you have changed your mind that using a SWAT team to arrest that gentleman was inappropriate?
My opinion remains to be anybody who's been cooperative and pledged to surrender in the case of law enforcement and criminal charges.
So the answer is no.
You
You also
is not
claim,
necessary for that.
reclaiming my time, you also claim that your top secret security clearance was improperly revoked, yet an independent investigation concluded that you demonstrated a number of security concerns, which included that you refused to execute a court-ordered arrest warrant and when you downloaded documents from intelligence systems to an unauthorized removable flash drive. The cherry on top could be your unauthorized recording of executive management, which I'm sure you know violates Florida law, along with your unsanctioned interviews with Sputnik News, established by the Russian government in 2014 and fully owned by the Kremlin and Putin's cronies.
Time of the gentleman
I think
has
it's
expired.
clear who is weaponizing government.
The
I yield back.
gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Friend, do you want to quickly respond to that? Because she cut you off and wouldn't let you respond to those
Yeah,
questions.
I can quickly respond to that. So the, you have to bring up, so the,
Let me help you.
yeah, go ahead.
So,
Prompt me.
So instead of using a SWAT team, if a suspect is being cooperative and in your testimony and in your experience as an FBI agent and a law enforcement officer, it's not necessary to use a SWAT team to go in with guns ablazing and pulled out and going after an individual when that individual is cooperating. And that wasn't that part of your testimony?
That's part of my testimony. It's part of what I brought forward in my whistleblower disclosure.
And that's in your experience as how many violent criminals have you arrested?
I've arrested over 150 and I have 5 years of SWAT experience.
And you didn't have to use, there wasn't necessity in some of those circumstances to use SWAT team because the individual was cooperating?
Never a single time.
And in your testimony, the individual that you were referring to that a SWAT team should not have been used on but was being used on for political purposes was somebody that was cooperating, correct?
Yes.
Based on your testimony, everybody else's testimony, which, by the way, I want to thank you guys for being here. I know it takes a lot of courage to do it. I want to thank you for your service as a military veteran myself who served, I was probably in Iraq when some of you guys were there. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for standing up for the Constitution, for America. because I know that this is difficult to go through, what your families are going through, being barricaded out of having your personal belongings, not being able to get pay, the FBI taking away your security clearances so you can't get a job. I commend you for standing up for American values and commend you for standing up for what you believe are huge misgrievances that are going on at the FBI. And based on y'all's testimony, the report that we have seen, the FBI has turned into the enforcement arm of the Democratic Party, going after pro-life individuals, going after individuals who were not in restricted areas on January 6th, who were not violent on January 6th, using SWAT teams to go after them to try to intimidate them. And then when officers like yourself, who have served our country, who have served the FBI, who have served in law enforcement, suddenly want to raise concerns and use the whistleblower status to be able to, hey, you know, this isn't right. This isn't the way that we should be treating these individuals. This isn't fair. Suddenly, the FBI is shutting you out, taking away your clearances, taking away your pay, shutting you down so that your families can't even survive financially. So I want to thank you for your testimony here today, and I hope the American people will gloss over the lies that have been perpetrated on you today for the truth that is underneath every single one of your statements. Egregious abuse, misallocation of law enforcement resources, misconduct in leadership ranks of the FBI. And I've been here 5 years, and during that period of time, Director Wray and AG Garland have both sat in desks just like that, under oath, and testified that they would not retaliate against whistleblowers. And it's my understanding, Mr. Friend, that you went through all of the required regulations at the FBI in order to raise your concerns to your supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you followed inside protocol for the FBI, utilizing whistleblower statute protection information regulations through the FBI to make your complaints and information be known.
Yes.
And you did that to your supervisors.
3 levels of supervisors.
3 levels of supervisors, and the response to that was losing your security clearance, shutting you out, losing your job, taking away your pay.
That's correct.
I'm so frustrated and angry, and I don't have, only a minute and a half left to try to display the level of corruption, weaponization, politicization that has occurred at the highest levels of the FBI and the DOJ. And both Director Wray and Merrick Garland have sat there and testified that there's no retribution for whistleblowers. No, we don't retaliate against whistleblowers, but we have testimony, and I'm a lawyer too, and testimony is a fact in evidence that exactly is what is going on in the FBI and the DOJ. Just quickly talk about how the inflation, Mr. Friend, of the domestic violence or the statistics as it relates to January 6th, how they were inflating those statistics to make it look like there was a bunch more cases than there really was.
Well, typically, you would investigate January 6th as one case with lots of subjects, but instead, the decision was made to open up a separate case for every single individual there, and instead of on paper investigating them from the Washington field office, spreading and disseminating those to the field offices around the country, and if the individual lived in that area. So it, in effect, made it look like there was domestic terrorism cases and activities that were going on around the 56 field offices, when in fact the cases were really all from Washington, D.C., and Washington field office had a task force that was responsible for calling the shots in all those cases.
Thank you guys for being here. My time's expired.
Gentleman yields back. We have votes on the floor to our witnesses, so we will take a break now. We will stand in recess until 15 minutes after the close of the vote, the final vote on the floor. And you guys are welcome to wait here in the back. The committee stands in recess.
Okay, we've got a recess. What should I do? What should I do here? Should I leave it open? Should I cut it? What did he say? 15 minutes after the vote? Well, who knows how long that's going to be. What I'll go ahead and do is cut this live stream, because the last time they did this to me, I sat here and watched the attendance dwindle, and then people would pop in and wonder what's going on, and then I'd be like, I don't know. So I guess what we'll do is just cut this one, and then I will immediately add the next live stream, and I guess the time will be TBD. For those of you on Rumble, again, thank you very much. If it wasn't for you, I would have quit doing this. Well, I started 6 weeks ago. I would have quit doing this 5 weeks ago and 5 days ago if it wasn't for you on Rumble. Because I can't even find myself on YouTube. So welcome, welcome. If you wouldn't mind following the channel and liking the video, sharing the content with those that you know. Those are things that help others find my channel as I figure out what I'm going to do. Crime Spies, we do true crime of all kinds. So whether it's crime from the government or crime from the Bidens or crime from true crime trials that are going on, new true crime stories that are breaking. I know the Jesse McFadden story there is just horrifying. So we're just trying to get our legs over here on Rumble and figure out which avenue is the best. But I really appreciate you stopping in this morning. We've made a whole $1.07 on Rumble in 6 weeks. So from my calculations, it's going to take a really long time to make a go of it. So if you wouldn't mind, please following the channel and liking the video. From what I'm hearing, it could be a scam, but what I'm hearing, that's supposedly what it takes. So for now, for those of you also watching on Rumble, not you YouTube people, because I've gotten thrown in YouTube jail a few times now in 6 weeks. So, but for those of you following on Rumble, I started doing a book club 2 weeks ago. I have audiobooks that I get through my Audible membership. We just finished Laptop from Hell yesterday by Miranda Devine. That book is available on my channel, the whole 21 chapters. Behind me, I'm not sure if you can see because I don't have my camera on. I can't see what you can see. Hopefully you can see me. But behind me is a book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called The Real Anthony Fauci from 2 years ago. And I started uploading that book as well. That book is 27 hours long, but we are listening to it in 1.2 times speed. So we're getting through it in about like 21 hours. Currently, I have the first 8 chapters of that on my Rumble channel. Again, not YouTube, because YouTube will throw me in jail again. I'm not sure at this point if I really care what YouTube does. Because Rumble just seems to be, I think I'm just meant to be on Rumble, I guess. So we've got the first 8 chapters of that. I'll probably start uploading chapter 9, which is 4 hours long, sometime probably this afternoon. And then the other book is Red Handed by Peter Schweitzer, which is about the corruption between the Bidens and China. So if you have a chance and like listening to audiobooks, if you need something to listen to on your way to and from work or to sitting in the airport waiting to catch a flight, please take a look at those. Another thing I wanted to mention is the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. book about Anthony Fauci behind me. Hopefully you can see it. There's the sequel to that is coming up in June. And it was supposed to come out in February, then it was supposed to come out in April, and now it's supposed to be released in June, and it's all about the Wuhan lab. So that one right now, the Kindle version is only $3.99, available for pre-sale. So those are just some things we have available on this channel. Next week, this exact subcommittee has requested that John Durham attend as a witness, and that's a week from today. So I'll be having that. Trump is supposed to be rescheduling his speech in Iowa. So when that happens, I will also be live streaming that because I like to watch it on RSBN. But when there's, 80,000 people, 100,000 people watching, it's kind of hard to have a conversation. So I've been, I think I've done one of his speeches, his New Hampshire one so far. So those are just some of the things on the political side, some of these spicy subcommittee hearings. Trump speeches, and whatever I think is going to be of interest. Then on the true crime side, we are going to be covering the Timothy Blyfnick trial. It starts on Monday, but Monday is jury selection, so I probably am not going to stream that. There is going to be a Zoom hearing for the Brian Kohlberger case. Brian Kohlberger is the one that's been arrested and indicted now by a grand jury as of yesterday in the deaths of the Idaho Four, the 4 students murdered in Idaho. So I'll probably do that on Monday, do that Zoom live stream. And then Tuesday we'll start the Timothy Blyfnick trial. He is in custody now to begin, like I said, Monday's jury selection. So Tuesday opening statements. I'll skip the Monday thing for the Brian Kohlberger. But he is the former Family Feud contestant from about 10 years ago. I have a clip actually on YouTube that has almost, I think there's over 250,000 views of it. He was asked by Steve Harvey when he was on Family Feud, what's the biggest mistake at your wedding? To which he replies, saying, I do. And then made a joke like, I really love my wife. Well, guess what? He's going on trial next week for murdering his wife, Rebecca Blyfnick. She was found with a gunshot wound. They were estranged. So that starts, I call it the Family Feud murderer, but, he was only on the episode once. And then tomorrow morning, I'm going to start just like a 1-hour recap of today's top stories or developments that happened overnight. I am working with the title, thinking maybe Covfefe in crime. Covfefe. We all know Goat POTUS and his Covfefe remark. So I thought, Covfefe in crime would be good. And again, we're going to cover political crime. We're going to cover true crime. We're going to cover missing persons like that Madeline Kingsbury, who's been missing for several weeks now, just south of me, about 2 hours in Winona, Minnesota. So we'll cover just some true crime headlines. I'll try to do part political headlines and then part true crime. So kind of capture both of the audiences. So again, I'm going to, if you could just follow the channel on Rumble, that would be great. Again, I've got 148 followers that I can see right now. And in 6 weeks, I've made $1.07. So I'm going to need a lot of followers. So if you could do that, that would be great. And hopefully we can really make a go of this, because I really don't want to quit now that I'm kind of into it. And meeting some really great people. I want to say thank you to the people in the chat. Yellowbird 500, thanks so much for stopping in and having we had some laughs over there. There was somebody earlier this morning, and when I refreshed, their little name went away, so I apologize. But thanks again for stopping by. So instead of me rambling, I'm going to break this, and then in about 5 minutes, Rumble will unleash my live stream code so that I can plug in the new one, because they're in recess right now taking a vote, and then they're going to resume this hearing about 15 minutes after the vote. So I'm just going to guess on the time. Oh, Yellowbird 500 just said, thank you for giving me a place to vent. You're very welcome, Yellowbird 500. Yeah, I like to talk over these. Well, actually, to be honest with you, I forgot to put in the title. Reaction videos are essentially videos where the host is reacting in live time with whatever it is that we're watching. I didn't put it in the title today, but so hopefully that won't offend people. I've been a little quiet this morning because I have a cold. I've got some bad allergies going on here, which is unfortunate. So anyway, so that's it for now. Like I said, I don't know if I dare put on like hold music or anything, because that's where I've run into problems with YouTube, is I'll put something on for us to watch, and then I get in trouble. and then they throw me in jail for a week. So I don't know. So I'll just end it. If you follow the channel, you'll get a new link, and I'm assuming it'll probably be half hour or so. So go grab a bite to eat, go get some, refill your kofefi, and we'll see you in a little while. And I think I have something I can put on here for God, these lights are so bright in my eyeballs. Eek! All right, this is just a little thing I have.
Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If you enjoyed the content, please hit that like button. Share this video on your social media. Subscribe to our channel. Turn on those important notifications. Follow us on Twitter. This channel is new, so that means we work for free. Any support is most appreciated through Rumble Rants, Venmo, or Buy Me a Coffee. All links are in the description box below. I look forward to your next visit to Crime Spies. Thanks again so much and have a blessed day.